we understand that when we read a novel, that it's a story. We don't always understand that an artist that we have this connection to is telling stories.
Which is sad.
Well, I mean, is it? Because
I think it's sad. What's going down is DJ Payne 1, joined by Dame Ritter. We are the Music Entrepreneur Club podcast. This is episode 3. We made it. Kato couldn't take the heat. I'm just kidding. He'll be back next week.
Well, episode 4.
Yeah, feels good, huh?
Yeah. Well, you just said 3, so I just wanted to let
I said 3?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm an idiot. Before we get into today's topic, I know you were inspired by a conversation with some former label employees. At least one of them was a former label employee. We have to address something serious that some of the listeners have brought up. Where does that door behind you lead?
Which door? Oh, this door. Oh,
the tiny one.
The tiny one up top?
Yeah. That's
just a random shelf. If you open it, it's just a shelf, and then the other door leads outside. I don't know how or why we started with this topic, but yeah, it's nothing.
No, it's important because once they pointed it out, I'm looking at it and I'm realizing how odd the placement is and how strange the size is and how it's just all very. I expect some kind of slender mythical creature to exit from that door at any moment.
I don't got nothing living in the walls. It's just an old ass house with a random ass cabinet, and I don't know why they put it there.
Okay, so on to the real topic. We were talking a little bit about the conversation you had with Mark Tavern and Jake, and I apologize, what's Jake's last name?
Jake Gold.
Jake Gold, and I know Mark Tavern was a former label employee. I don't know which label he worked for.
But off top, I don't remember either, but he was also a guest on one of my live sessions, and that's how I originally kind of got introduced to him and started learning more about his background. So he joined one of our Monday live sessions, which was probably one of our best sessions. I thought it was super insightful. But so from that session, we talked about how the manager's role has evolved over time. And I thought it was dope what he was saying. So I took that and posted that as a highlight on Twitter and on Instagram. And what Mark was saying was that the manager role has evolved to someone that was primarily kind of going back and forth between the artist and the label, kind of making sure that the artist got paid, making sure studio sessions were booked, because the label, 20 years ago was more of like the hub versus now where the manager has more responsibilities, more of a business development role, because the artist is the hub and the artist is making more of the decisions and the label has less control over everything. So that's essentially what the highlight from that session said. And then Jake chimed in on Twitter and disagreed, but we didn't have that discussion right then on Twitter. We decided that we would set a time and have a special session where we can talk about why he disagreed on Zoom. So we did that yesterday. So we had a special MEC session that was open to the public, and we had a really dope discussion, just between 3 managers with different levels of experience, different types of experiences, different genres of artists. And I think it's always healthy to have these kind of discussions because nothing really is ever the same in the music industry. I mean, I know there's general perceptions of things here and there, but a lot of them can be shattered because there's so many different ways to establish a career. There's differences maybe between genres. So I think it's always healthy to hear different perspectives from managers. And essentially what Jake was saying and why he disagreed is that his approach has always been more encompassing. Even 20 years ago, he didn't feel like the record label was the hub. He always took a more encompassing approach with his artist. But I think Mark probably never saw that because at that time he was on the label side of things, and the managers that he did see were doing more of what he talked about, was just kind of going back and forth between the label and the artist. So he maybe wasn't exposed to managers that didn't approach things that way and looked at it more of like a business development role even back then. So
yeah, I can see that because he wasn't actually managing artists. He was just seeing his interactions with the managers were as a label staff.
right. And maybe and probably the managers that he saw were doing just that, right? You know, I think part of what's contributed to Jake's success over, you know, the past 30 plus years is his approach. He's had that approach since day one. You know, of building the overall business of the artist and not just being somebody that communicates with the label and trying to get the check from the label. You know, it's thinking about fan engagement, it's thinking about touring strategy, it's thinking about merchandising. But I think out of that conversation, you know, I think people realize, again, that managers are different. Managers take different approaches. And I think what I tried to pull out of that, and I mentioned at the end of our session, is that if you're an artist looking for a manager, you need to understand that managers do have different approaches. Managers do have different experiences. Managers do have different skill sets. Not all managers are the same. So when you're looking for a manager, understand what you need out of a manager and make sure the one that you decide to work with fits that hole that you feel is missing in your skill set or missing in your career. Because Jake, for example, you know, Jake has worked with big bands. They've sold tens of millions of records. They've gone on tour. They've done arena tours. You know, me personally, I don't have that experience. You know, I've started an independent label from the ground up, heavy social media engagement, coming up with creative ideas, ways to build fan bases. It's not like heavy radio. It's not big arena tours, anything like that. So you can see how not all managers are the same. And I think that we lump these positions into the same bucket often, whether it's a manager, whether it's a booking agent. Like, you know, people are different. People have different skill sets.
Yeah, I think there's this perception from, you know, artists who are younger in the game, not in age necessarily, just in experience, where the manager does everything,
Right.
books the shows, runs the social media, gets them a label deal, talks to the label, reads over their contracts. And so I think before an artist can even identify what they need in a potential manager, they have to understand what a manager even does. And the thing I always say is, you know, before you even look for a manager, work as hard as you possibly can until you're completely overwhelmed with the work that you're doing. Then you'll know what you need.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, if you sit around and make music all day and say, damn, I need a manager, you're not going to be able to tell the manager what to do. You're just going to say, hey, make me bigger, make me a star, make me famous. That's not specific information. And any manager that looks at you and says, yeah, I'm going to make you a star, it's probably lying, and you should probably not work with that person.
Right. Yeah. No, I just thought it was a really dope conversation, and maybe we should switch topics because I know that we've talked about management already, but given the fact that that conversation came up yesterday and happened yesterday, I think it highlighted a couple new points. And hopefully for the listeners, it highlights that you need to be in our live sessions every Monday and Tuesday, because a lot of dope stuff happens in them and a lot of gems get dropped that I think are crucial in terms of learning the business, because you're not going to learn the business in a meme. You're not going to learn the business in 60-second Instagram videos. So
yeah, but I think, okay, that this topic comes up a lot because it's brought up a lot, because that misconception is really strong in the unsigned artist community, producers too. Everybody just thinks they need a manager starting out, and that manager is the key to success and to fame. And you know, that's definitely the wrong approach, but it's also an approach that's going to hold you back because, like you said, you know, join the live sessions and learn about the business. But if you're perception of the business is that a manager steps in, they're the ones who know all the business, they're the ones who handle all the business, so you don't have to. You're never going to learn all the business. Right. And so by not learning all the business, you don't build your brand up to the point where you're attracting managers that can actually help you get to where you want to get to.
Right. And then it just goes back to what you said. Like, if you don't, a lot of cats just want help and they think that they're stuck because they don't have a manager, because they don't really know what a manager does, like you said. So, we really need to educate ourselves, because if you don't educate yourself, you're going to be stuck in this business and with not very much movement. And you're going to be pointing fingers every which direction, probably except yourself. And that's not a recipe to win.
Yeah, I never hear musicians who don't, quote unquote, make it blame themselves or point out their own mistakes or their own shortcomings.
Right.
And I think people in general don't take accountability for their own actions and their own mistakes. It's just that it goes back to what you said. There's no clear path in music in terms of some kind of, educational trajectory. You go to college and become a famous rapper. You go to a 2-year program and become a famous producer. It doesn't work that way. But even in the job market, it doesn't necessarily work that way either. You don't just go to college and suddenly you get a job after your 4 years are up.
Right.
You still have to be marketable. You still have to do the work. You still have to network. You still have to get that resume. So I almost disagree with you, Dane, because I understand there's not a clear path, but I don't think there's a clear path in life, period. I mean, certain careers will streamline you a little better, but at the end of the day, you got to do the work. And in the music business, it seems like the myths and the lies are much more pervasive than the truth is. And so there are some pretty clear paths. We know what those paths are because we talk about them all the time. We try to convey those. That's why we're going on tour. That's why we have these live sessions, because we're trying to illuminate these paths. I mean, there are many paths. There are always paths.
But that's what I'm saying, right? Like, there's many paths. If you want to be a lawyer, how many paths are there really? There's probably 2. And
well, there are a lot. I disagree with that. Maybe that's just a bad example, because you can be any kind of lawyer. You can be a real estate lawyer. That's different from being an entertainment lawyer. You're going to have to go through 2 totally different networking.
But the thing is, if you want to be a lawyer, in most states, you have to go to college. You have to go to law school. You have to pass a bar exam, and then you can go into whatever type of law you have. We don't, in music, you don't even have that initial structure, right? So that's ultimately what I'm saying. So yeah, there definitely is some variances once you start deciding which type of law you want to practice. But in terms of the base, the foundation, there's no, you have to do this in order to be, in order to be a musician.
What's messed up though? The fact that there are so many more options. I mean, if you choose to be a musician, you choose to make music one way, but you're doing all of the right things. You're communicating your story. You're talking with your fans. You're making them feel appreciated. You're consistently putting out content that's high quality and authentic. That could look completely different from one person to the next. And you might end up not ever wanting to tour, or you might end up only wanting to tour and not making any revenue off of streams. I mean, you can do that. You can make a living doing any of that. And so it's actually in some ways easier than a traditional job like being a lawyer, because like you said, there's one path to becoming a licensed attorney. You have to pass the bar, right? In music, you don't have to pass the bar. There's no test. The only test is whether or not people like your music and will support you because of your music and your brand. And so in that sense, it's kind of easier because you have more options. If you fail the bar, that's it. You either retake it again or pass it. If you fail it again, I don't know what to tell you. he wasted all that time. With music, at any given moment, because you're a creative, you can just implement your creativity into something brand new. And if it works, it works. You're successful at it. It's crazy to me that I'm seeing artists all the time making the same mistakes over and over and over and over again, and not putting the work in, and then pointing their finger at everybody. Like I put out 5 mixtapes last year and I didn't get signed. It's the label's fault.
Right. Well, the easier part is subjective, right? Like, because some people find it easy to discipline themselves, to come up with their own strategy, to come up with a structure, having never never had structure before, because that's necessary in your pursuit of a career as a musician. And in addition to that, there's more demand for lawyers than there is musicians, right? So it's, as a musician, you're an entrepreneur, so you have to create demand for your music. And right now there's way more artists and music being created than there is demand for it, as we've seen from the statistics on Spotify, where a majority of the songs on Spotify don't even have a play, or a few plays. So if you're able to, you can figure it out. I definitely wouldn't put it in the easy category. It just depends on what type of person you are, right? If you can figure things out on your own, then maybe music is easier for you. But if you need the structure, you need to be told, like, this is what it is, and you need to get the bar exam prep materials because they have that. At the end of the day, we just want to lift up the hood and show people, give people good information. So no matter what path they choose, at least they're getting good information.
Yeah. So switching gears, this is a good segue for what I wanted to talk about in terms of branding. This whole fake it till you make it philosophy is still strong in the unsigned music community. Where do you, when you hear the phrase "fake it till you make it," what do you think? What comes up in your mind?
It's dangerous, man. It's super dangerous. I've seen it. I've seen that strategy work for a very few people, but more often than not, artists get trapped in their own delusion. Right? They're faking it till they make it, and then they fake out themselves, thinking that they're at a higher point than they really are. So then, I always go back to kind of levels, right? So if you're faking it till you make it, and then you trick yourself into believing that you're on level 5 when you're really on level 3, you'll never get to level 4 because you think you're past that, and you won't do the things necessary to actually make the real transition from 3 to 4 because you think you're on 5. So when that happens, you just kind of get trapped and stuck. And that's what I've seen more often than it actually working. So it's a dangerous game to play. To fake it till you make it, it's a dangerous game to play. You have to just continuously remind yourself that you are faking it, and never lose that reality for yourself, even if you're trying to trick, potential fans.
Have you ever gone to an event and an artist that has come up on stage that probably doesn't have fans, probably doesn't have a career yet in music, and that artist is making announcements about all the dope stuff they're doing? I got a beat from so and so. I'm talking to Brian Michael Cox. I'm about to go, meet up with Def Jam. I'm about to head up to the Def Jam office. This I got a hit record on Spotify, knowing damn well it doesn't have more than 1,000 plays. Have you ever seen that happen?
Not necessarily like live at a show, but I've definitely seen it on social media, or just, talking to cats, just understanding, like, this cat's definitely trying to gas me, because if all this stuff was happening, he'd probably be in a better position right now.
Well, okay, there's the name dropping thing. That's the word. I mean, I've been cornered by rappers in venues that just want to talk to me about how Rick Ross wants to sign. I remember there's this one dude that just wouldn't let me walk away because he had to tell me that Rick Ross was going to sign him and then I needed to work with him. And it's all this name dropping stuff. And what bothers me about that interaction, from my perspective, is that you really think I'm that stupid. You really think I've been in this game for 12 plus years as a professional, and you're just gonna drop Rick Ross' name, an artist I've worked with a couple times, and I'm just gonna say, oh yeah, let me invest all my time and energy into you just because you brought up somebody's name, and that's a major turnoff. When I was a kid, when I was 14, 15, making beats, and someone came by and they were like, yeah, I know Twista's cousin. It was like, oh, cool, yeah, come on, let's get some work in. But once you reach a certain point, you realize none of that means anything. And I would prefer somebody walk up to me and say, I don't have anything going for myself other than my work ethic and my music, and I have this unique story. I remember the one artist I ever managed, formally. He was this young kid. His talent spoke for itself, and his identity and his background was unique and so easy to market to hundreds of thousands of other young people who could relate to his story. He had no cosigns. He didn't even have recorded music. And to me, that was more powerful than saying, I got a selfie in front of the Def Jam building. And think on a larger topic, when we're talking about faking it till you make it, the whole fake it till you make it mentality is all about tricking other people, deceiving other people to make yourself seem more legitimate as a musician in the business, right? I mean, that's the whole point. You fake it so that people think, okay, this guy's doing, or this person's doing more than they actually are. But because I believe that they're bigger than they are, I'm going to give them all these resources. And then, from that point on, they're going to have these resources and they're going to turn it into something. So they actually will make it based on this lie that they're telling people. But if you're lying to the people, you're not telling your story. You're not being your authentic self.
Right.
And I think, especially with this whole, this industry plant outing culture that we have now in rap because of the internet, and everybody wants to accuse somebody of being an industry plant. The opposite is actually happening. You're seeing, in some cases, artists get signed by a label and then hide that fact so they can appear more independent so that their fans still mess with them. So I don't see why fake it till you make it is still even a thing, because I think psychologically, and this is my opinion, you tell me what you've observed, Dame, but my opinion is that if you have artist A, right, and artist B, both of these artists don't have a career. They don't have fans yet. They have 100 Twitter followers, 50 Instagram followers each, right?
Right.
Artist A takes pictures of himself at the Def Jam office and, wearing sunglasses indoors and holding a bottle of Ace that he borrowed from his friend, and talks about how big he's about to be and he's a superstar and he wants to appear as a celebrity so people treat him as a celebrity. All right, artist B, right? She tells her story. She says she's struggling. She appreciates all the fans that she does have, even though there are very few of them. She puts out music. She's honest about her situation. I'm going to support her. I'm not going to support this guy because this guy looks like an asshole to me. This guy looks like a celebrity. Why do I want to support someone who already has celebrity and fame and riches, even though all that's a lie? But if I believe his lie, he's rich, he's famous already. Why do I want to support him? I want to support the underdog. She's the one whose story resonates with me, because that's how, we damn near all of, unless we're like the children of celebrities, all of us start out from a point where we have to struggle to achieve whatever goals we set for ourselves. And so if I see an artist who's telling that story, I'm going to automatically have some kind of empathy for them. And you know what I mean? That means that I'm going to support them. I'm not going to support this other person because I perceive them as already having more than enough, right? Is that how you feel about this whole fake it till you make it thing? I think that's a myth that artists don't understand.
So A couple things. One, when artists approach you, I don't think you should take it personal because I don't think they think you're stupid. I think that they believe that's what they think the industry values and that's what'll get people's attention. So I don't necessarily think it's about them thinking you're stupid. And I understand kind of knowing you why you would gravitate towards the artist that you just described more so than the one that's faking it till they make it. But I can also see how some people might be more attracted to if they believe that I don't know which one was A or which one was B, but if they believe that the artist that was faking it, you know, saying that they had the Rick Ross cosign, if somebody did believe that, you know, I can see how some short-sighted people, these get money quick, you know, thinking type people might be more attracted to that artist because he believes that that person is already moving, so they want to attach themselves to somebody that's about to blow up, right?
But as a fan, though,
but I think that a lot of people can get fooled, in, you know, some people are good at the fake it till you make it, right? Some people are on TV. I mean, I think we've seen a lot of people that we think are successful because they're on TV, they're maybe even touring. Maybe they even have big hits, but they still don't have what they say they have, right? And we've seen that a lot in the hip hop. So there's definitely levels to the fake it till you make it strategy. You know, but I think ultimately it's dangerous, not only because of what I described earlier in terms of like you getting trapped in your own delusion, but it's something that if you want to build real relationships with people like you're talking about, if you want to have pain champion you, like even if you fake fans, the people that are working day to day with you are going to know what you're doing. And your reputation may get tarnished because of how you move, how you really operate. Because I think fans are a little easier to fool because they're not as hands-on with these artists. You know, but at the end of the day, I agree with you, Payne, because I'm the same way. I would definitely gravitate to artists that are more authentic in telling their truth. I don't want to be a part of, you know, lying. I don't really want to be a part of, you know, I don't want to have to play a role in your fantasy that you've created, right? I don't want to be I'm not comfortable with that. So at the end of the day, I agree with you, but I also see why and how, you know, people are, you know, faking it till they make it.
So we'll take Lil Nas X as an example. I'm venturing into the territory of speculation, right? I don't know him personally. I don't know what's going on around him in his immediate circle. I don't know his business. From my perspective, and I do like his song Panini a lot. I don't know why. I'm mad that it's like a minute and a half long. It should be longer, but I like that song. So you can consider me a fan, right? So as a fan, I'm looking at his career trajectory, right? Old Town Road starts bubbling on the social media platforms, specifically TikTok. That was a very democratic process, right? Obviously, once the label gets a hold of the record, and I believe it was Columbia, right? Once that happens, he gets the Billy Ray Cyrus cosign. The sample gets cleared. You know, that's an extra boost because the song already has this upward momentum. But you know, once that whole Billboard controversy came out about the country versus hip hop categorization, that galvanized a lot of people. That situation didn't paint Lil Nas X as some powerful celebrity. It painted him as an artist of a genre being marginalized as a person of color, as a hip hop artist. And that only galvanized current fans to want to support him even more. It wasn't that he put some sunglasses on and a chain on and says, yeah, I made it, stream my music. It was that people saw what he was going through publicly and said, we got to support him because he's going through something right now. And then once he had all that support, I feel like that extra support, it was so authentic that people sincerely wanted to support him because of the struggle he was going through, that he's breaking all of these records because of that connection from the fans. And then, you know, the song shows No Signs of Letting Up. Last day of Pride Month, he comes out, galvanizes his fans even further, because millions of people are identify as LGBTQ, or have or you're a friend or a family member of somebody who does. Now you're relating him to another kind of struggle,
right?
And that connection becomes even more authentic because it's relatable. And bear in mind, this is a record-breaking song, not just in rap, but period. I mean, it's if he lasts, I think, 14 weeks, which I'm betting he's going to, he's probably going to surpass as number one. That's history made.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, using Old Town Road as an example, I mean, I think that's an anomaly in and of itself, but, you know, there's different ways to get momentum started. And, you know, I think most people want authenticity, but I think we've seen examples of inauthenticity and we've seen it work. So I'm not confused. I'm not wondering why people are trying to fake it till you make it. Like, I have seen it work in very few instances, right? Like, I don't, like, you can listen to pretty much.
Can we say names?
Huh?
Can we say names?
You know, I don't know specifics of Rick Ross's trajectory, right? But I don't think Rick Ross was always the boss that he spoke about being, right? You know, I never dived deep into, you know, his correctional officer past, but I don't think he's always been the big boss that, you know, maybe he is now, right? And I think a lot of rappers portray themselves to be something that they're not really living at the moment, even if at some point they fill those shoes. And I think that feeds into the music. And, you know, sometimes people just exaggerate what they have going on. I've seen independent artists do it, you know, saying that they're selling out shows left and right, and they're really not. Like, again,
and that benefits them. That leads to them actually.
I think that it can. I think that, you know, their fans, you know, they, you know, especially in the independent community, like their fans want to be a reason why they're progressing. They want to be part of this story, right? So they always want to see that the fan, because they're real fans of these artists, right? So they want to be a reason why they continue to progress. So I think a lot of artists, even if it's just embellishing a little bit, I think a lot of artists participate in it. You know, they're not really talking about what really goes down at shows and what's really happening in their life. It's not, you know, let's talk about Hopsin. Like, you know, he has a song called Fort Collins, and this is not like, he has a song called Fort Collins, and it's based around, you know, he was on tour, and the truth is he just doesn't like to tour. Sometimes he gets fed up with his fans, and he doesn't like the pressure or whatever it is, and he
Which,
just,
for the record, is 100% understandable. It's touring is really, really
okay. Okay, so he just leaves the tour. So he just leaves the tour, tells people not to come to the shows, becomes like the anti-promoter, right? But he doesn't want to tell the truth about what actually happened. So he makes this song called Fort Collins, you know, talking about how he left the show and went to an abandoned building. You know, when the truth is he just had some chick pick him up and he was just in his feelings. Like, everybody's not telling the truth in their songs. Like, I see it, but of course telling that story is going to connect with his type of fan base, because a lot of his fans are, you know, maybe suffering from some type of mental illness. Maybe they're depressed, and they play on that to increase that engagement, to increase that attachment. if you have a fan base that desires luxury things and that likes luxury things, some artists are going to play to that because they know what their fans like, even if that's not really what they own. So again, like I get why artists are doing it. Or even with this whole sad, like unfortunately, there's a very popular sound right now, and like the focus of it, it's a very depressing, it's self-medicating. A lot of these songs are just depressing, self-medicating. And I know artists that aren't really depressed right now, but they're like, Dame, they keep loving these sad songs, so I'm going to make them. They're streaming well, they're getting on playlists. I'm like, bro, but I feel like you're contributing to the self-medication of a younger generation, even if that's not what you're going through, right? So I get it. I'm not a fan of it. I don't really want to be a part of it, but I understand what they're doing because for some artists it's working.
But then do we draw a distinction between the authenticity of the art itself and the branding? I mean, I'm more talking about the branding, because if an artist goes on stage, suddenly they have artistic license, right? They can write a song that isn't authentic to them. But if the art is doing justice to the content, then it might resonate with people. Whereas someone telling me flat out that they're about to get signed to MMG, I should work with them. Or someone going on stage and in between songs, or someone going on social media and posting selfies in front of the label offices saying big things coming, and posting a photo of them at the Grammys saying just got through with my Grammy party, when in reality they just bought a ticket and walked in like any other regular person.
Well, that goes back to what I was talking about in terms of getting trapped in your delusion, right?
Right.
I think it could start off with songs, and then people start believing your songs, and now people want to have very real conversations about these songs, and now you got to continue this story, right?
Well, unless you just come out and just be your authentic self and say, look, this song is from someone else's perspective. I'm a right. I mean, but this is a much bigger topic, right? I mean, if we talk to Stephen King and say, Stephen King, man, you've never killed anybody. You've never you've never fought the manifestation of evil in the form of a clown like the kids in your stories do. We don't expect him to.
Totally different, right? We understand that when we read a novel, that it's a story. We don't always understand that an artist that we have this connection to is telling stories,
which is sad.
Well, I mean, is it? Because
I think it's sad.
Well, it's hard to understand, when are we storytelling? When are we being authentic? Because there's such a, because some artists pride themselves on being so real, and now you have a very real connection with people. So unless you tell me like, hey, I'm about to tell a story that's not real, I'm going to assume that you actually experience these things, because music is often very personal.
It is, but so is writing. And I remember watching, I don't know why, it wasn't on TV. It was a Bill O'Reilly interview of KRS-One, right? And Bill O'Reilly's taking KRS-One to task for writing a very negative song called 100 Guns, 200 Clip, right? And that summarized how stupid Bill O'Reilly and Fox News networks are to me. But in that song, because I'm a big KRS-One fan, at the end of the song, KRS-One goes to prison for running guns. Obviously, that didn't happen in real life. Obviously, this was a story that, had a purpose. It was not just a story to make KRS-One seem like a gun runner. He was actually talking about a network of corruption with regard to firearm sales. Now, if you're a fan and you don't understand that KRS-One didn't actually go to jail, or if he had another song where he dies in the end. Slick Rick had a song where he, Mona Lisa didn't happen. Come on. So
but you're a fan, so you might be familiar with his work, and you might be more accurately able to draw the line between, fact and fiction. If you were to, if nobody knew who KRS-One was, and you just played this song for him, why is it unreasonable to think that he's telling a true story?
Well, I guess if he died in the end and he's still alive, that's a good indication that it's probably a story. But just in terms of,
but it goes for any song. I mean, I think you're playing to an extreme to make a point, but like it goes for any song. If I've never been introduced to an artist before, and I hear a song about, a drug overdose or, something personal or whatever, why would I just assume that it's fake? Unless it's just completely like has dragons and monsters or something.
I mean, hopefully you would use your power of discernment, but a lot of people, it comes down to the fact that people don't have that. And what I might consider common sense is really not for most people. But I personally think that there should be some kind of that we should distinguish between authenticity and art. And the authenticity factor comes in when the art stops. It's everything surrounding the art. And I understand that it's not that simple. In a perfect world, it would be, you can rap about whatever you want. But when it's time to make the distinction between you as a person and your art, and let's be honest, in the business world, there's a very clear distinction between the two. Some people are, as humans, are bigger than their music. Some people are smaller than their music. Some people have singles that people don't even realize are their singles because music is bigger than them. And as a result, that might hurt and damage their brands. But with regard to artists who are just starting out, if your branding isn't authentically yours and it's not something that is going to sustain itself because it's real, you're going to find that in a couple of years, that's all going to crumble. You can't maintain that lie. With the art, you have some degree of padding because you have artistic license, as long as your brand is authentic, as long as you are conveying yourself as a human to your fans, and that's where the connection is. They can support your art as a result. That's my point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've seen music have some very real impact on people's lives. Like I've always been a music fan, but I've never, been a fan to a point where, I wanted like a tattoo of an artist logo on me or anything like that. I didn't see that really. I didn't really see music impact people like that until Funk Volume. And, we had Funk Volume fans tattoo Funk Volume on themselves. So I see how people take some of the music, and I see how people, it inspires them, encourages them, but I think from their perspective, the artist is being authentic. They're not making up stories. So I see why it's not, just black and white with fans, at least. So it's tough, and I don't fault them for it, because depending on the artist, somebody like Flo Rida, if I listen to a Flo Rida song, I'm not expecting to, whatever he says, it's probably just going to be a party jam, up tempo, whatever. Somebody that's more personal in their music and more authentic. Like when I hear a Russ song, I don't really think he's making. I think he's, for the most part, being, authentic and genuine about what's happening, and how he feels. So because you have these two, extreme perspectives or two extremes on the spectrum, it's hard to know where to land, as a fan. So it's just tough. But, I'm always a fan of being authentic, and because if you're not, it starts to hurt like real relationships in real life. because I've seen, you know, a lot of artists get trapped in their delusion, and that's unfortunate.
And then the thing about name dropping too is that you name drop around enough people, we have social media, we have phones, we can verify that. And that's as Dame would say, all bad.
It is all bad. Name dropping is whack. But it doesn't seem like we're gonna have enough time to get to my other topic, so we might need to table it to next week. There was an article that came out from Billboard that talked about unsigned artists, how they're generating more income than they ever have before. And just to tease a little bit, it says that artists without record labels are now generating, or they generated 643 million in 2018, and that's up 35% from the prior year. And that may seem impressive and that may seem good. However, that still only represents 3.3% of the share of recorded music revenues, and it's up from 2.8%. So, you know, we're celebrating this independent rah, 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 and the money is going up, but it's still 3.3% of the share of recorded music revenues. And we're going to jump into some of these specifics next week. Because I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I'm excited for that conversation. Well, once again, appreciate all of you tuning in. This is episode 4 of the MEC podcast. Next week, I think Kato will be back. We'll talk about this Billboard article, and we will debate some music business topics right here. Once again, peace, everyone.